What would you do if you found a woman half dead in the dirt, bruised, terrified, and running from a man who wanted her dead? Jacob Rhodes never imagined the answer would change his life forever. The winter had been the harshest the Arizona Territory had seen in years. Bitter winds cut through the plains like sharpened knives. Mud swallowed the trails whole. Nights echoed with the cries of coyotes and the desperate prayers of travelers who feared they would never see another sunrise. Jacob Rhodes, a grieving widower trying to keep his ranch alive, was riding home from Dry Gulch at sunset when his mare Daisy stopped suddenly. Her ears twisted forward as if she sensed something. Jacob narrowed his pale blue eyes and scanned the muddy road. Beside a large boulder lay a young woman in tattered rags. Her dress was ripped, her skin covered in dirt, and bruises circled her wrists. She clutched a small leather pouch to her chest as if it held her last bit of hope. For a terrifying moment, Jacob thought she was dead. He knelt beside her, fingers trembling as he checked her pulse. It fluttered weakly under his fingertips. She was alive but fading. "Ma'am," he whispered, "can you hear me?" Her eyes flickered open, brown eyes wide with fear, lips cracked and dry. She tried to speak, but only a faint rasp came out. Jacob didn't think twice. He lifted her into his arms and placed her carefully on Daisy. She weighed almost nothing. A soul beaten down by life and left to die on the side of the road. As he rode toward his ranch, the sky cracked open with thunder. Cold wind tore through the air. Jacob whispered small prayers under his breath, hoping she would keep breathing long enough for him to help her. At the ranch, he carried her inside and laid her on his bed. He lit the lantern and stoked the fire hard until its warmth filled the small cabin. He cleaned the dirt from her face and arms with warm water, wincing when he saw the deep bruises on her ankles and wrists, signs of someone held against their will. Hours later, she stirred. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "Who are you?" "Jacob Rhodes," he said gently. "I found you on the road. You're safe now." She pulled the blanket tight around herself. Tears filled her eyes. "My name is Emma." Jacob nodded softly. Emma is a good name. When he asked about her injuries, she hesitated, trembling. "I can't go back," she whispered. "He'll kill me." Those words cut Jacob straight to the heart. He remembered the helplessness he felt when his wife Caroline died 2 years earlier from cholera. He had been powerless to save her. But Emma was still alive, still fighting, still terrified. Jacob sat beside her, struggling with a decision that felt wild, reckless, and yet strangely right. "Emma," he said softly, "I know we just met, but I can protect you if you stay here, and there's only one sure way to keep the law from forcing you back to anyone." Emma looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" Jacob swallowed hard. "I'll marry you." Emma stared at him as if she didn't understand the words. Her breath caught. Her frightened eyes widened even more. "But we're strangers." Jacob nodded slowly. "I know, but a wife cannot be forced to testify against her husband, and nobody in Dry Gulch will question your right to stay here if you're Mrs. Rhodes. It's protection, Emma. A real one." She looked around the small room, at the fire, at the borrowed clothes draped over the chair, at her bare feet tucked under the blanket. All she had in the whole world was the pouch she clung to, a pouch filled with secrets, a place she couldn't return to, a man who wanted her dead. Her voice trembled. "If I say yes, will you keep me safe?" Jacob's voice was steady. "With my life." Her eyes glistened with tears as she nodded, a small, fragile nod. A surrender to survival. By morning, Sheriff James Donovan arrived to check on Jacob. When he saw Emma shaking by the fire and heard what had happened, he sighed heavily, but agreed to perform a simple ceremony. In the Arizona Territory, the sheriff's word was as binding as a preacher's. Jacob fetched Carl Everett, a ranch hand, and Millie Porter, an elderly pie seller from town, to serve as witnesses. The fire crackled as the small group gathered inside Jacob's cabin. Emma stood in a borrowed skirt and shirt, pale but determined. Jacob stood beside her, steady as a stone, his heart pounding in his chest. Sheriff Donovan cleared his throat. "Do you, Jacob Rhodes, take this woman, Emma, to be your lawful wife?" Jacob looked at Emma, saw the fear and hope mixed in her eyes, and said, "I do." "Emma," Donovan continued softly, "do you take Jacob as your husband?" Emma swallowed, her voice barely steady. "I do." The sheriff nodded. "Then by the authority of this territory, I declare you husband and wife." Carl clapped. Millie wiped a tear. Jacob breathed out shakily. Emma Rhodes, his wife. But he could see the storm still hiding behind her eyes. The bruises were only the surface. The real danger was the man chasing her. And sooner or later, he would come. Jacob Rhodes wasn't just a widower anymore. He was a protector, and trouble was already on its way. What do you do when danger isn't just chasing your past, but riding straight toward your future? Jacob and Emma Rhodes were about to find out. For the first few days, after the sudden roadside wedding, life at the ranch felt strangely calm. Emma tried to help wherever she could. She cooked simple meals, swept the floors, and tended to the small vegetable patch. Jacob repaired fences, fed the cattle, and checked on the well. They moved around each other carefully, like two souls learning how to breathe again. But Emma carried a fear that never fully left her eyes. She jumped at distant thunder. She froze whenever hooves echoed in the distance. At night, she kept the revolver under her pillow. Jacob pretended not to notice the night she cried silently, facing the wall. He never pushed her, only told her the same gentle words each morning. "You're safe here." But deep inside, he knew safety was fragile. One afternoon, Sheriff Donovan arrived at the ranch. His horse was lathered in sweat, and his expression was grim. "Jacob," he called out. "Emma, we need to talk." Emma stepped onto the porch, Jacob beside her. Donovan removed his hat. "There's a man in town asking questions," Donovan said. "He's asking about a woman with brown eyes and a scar on her left wrist." Emma's blood ran cold, her hand trembled as she lifted her sleeve. The faint scar, Roy Gallows, cruelty, glowed like a warning. "It's him," she whispered, "or one of his men." Donovan nodded. "They're moving across the territory looking for you. One of them goes by Luther Easton. He's rough. Real rough." Jacob wrapped an arm protectively around Emma's shoulders. "What should we do?" he asked. "Stay close to the ranch," Donovan said. "Lock doors. Keep your guns ready, and don't trust any stranger who rides up your road." Those words hit Emma hard. Fear curled inside her like a tight fist, but she lifted her chin and nodded. She had survived worse. She would not let Roy drag her back. The next morning brought trouble faster than they expected. Jacob was chopping wood when a lone rider approached. The man was stocky, with a sly grin and eyes that never settled. Jacob knew him instantly. Billy Taggett. A former lawman turned outlaw. Billy reined in his horse and tipped his hat lazily. "Heard you got hitched, Jacob," he said. "Town's buzzing. Folks say you married some girl you found in rags." Emma stepped out onto the porch, hands trembling but steadying the moment she stood beside Jacob. Billy smirked. "Well now, you must be the runaway." Emma stiffened. Jacob stepped forward, rifle angled. "What do you want, Billy?" "Nothing much," Billy said. "Just came by to let you know some men are paying good money for information. Seems they're hunting a little bird who flew away." Jacob's jaw clenched. "Leave, now." Billy chuckled, unbothered. "Suit yourself, but those men will come. And they ain't as friendly as me." He spurred his horse and rode off, leaving a trail of dust and a growing knot of dread in Jacob's stomach. That evening, Jacob and Emma barred every door and window. The fire crackled, but its warmth did nothing to settle their nerves. Emma whispered, "Jacob, I don't want to live my life running." Jacob turned to her, his eyes soft but fierce. "You won't, not while I'm breathing." But the danger didn't wait. The next day, Donovan arrived again, this time not alone. He brought Carl Everett, Harold the gunsmith, and even Millie Porter. "I figured you two might need help," Donovan said simply. By sundown, the ranch was fortified with makeshift barricades, extra rifles, and a group of determined friends. Emma was stationed near the porch with her revolver. Her hands shook at first, but she steadied herself. She wasn't the same frightened girl Jacob found on the road. She was willing to fight. As night settled, a strange quiet fell across the plains. Too still, too heavy. The moon dipped behind clouds, turning the ranch yard into a pool of shadows. Then Carl's voice cut the silence. "Riders! 5, maybe 6!" Emma's breath caught. Heavy hoofbeats thundered toward them. Jacob stepped forward, rifle ready. Donovan spread his men out. The outlaw gang came into view, hard men with vicious eyes. At the front rode a tall figure with a scar down his cheek, Roy Gallows. Emma's chest tightened when she saw him. "Evening, folks," Roy called out. "We've come for the girl." "Hand her over, and we'll walk away." Jacob stepped in front of Emma. "You're not taking her." Roy chuckled, low and cruel. "You think you can protect her? You and your little farm crew?" Emma stepped out from behind Jacob, raising her revolver with shaking hands. "I'm not yours," she said clearly. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." Roy's smile faded. "Then you're a fool." For a heartbeat, the night froze. Then, gunfire exploded across the yard. Bullets tore through the air, splintering wood and sending sparks of dirt flying. Emma dove behind a barrel, firing back with shaky aim. Jacob ducked behind the trough, returning shot after shot. Donovan's rifle boomed from behind the wagon. Carl's shotgun thundered, dropping one outlaw to the ground. Roy shouted orders from horseback. His men flanked the ranch, closing in. Emma peeked from behind cover just as Roy aimed at Jacob's head. Her heart dropped. She fired. Her bullet struck Roy in the side. He howled, slipping from his saddle and hitting the dirt hard. The remaining outlaws hesitated. Carl fired again. Harold's pistol cracked. The gang panicked, grabbed their wounded leader, and retreated into the dark. Silence fell. Emma's revolver slipped from her shaking hands. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Jacob rushed to her, pulling her into his arms. "You did it," he murmured. "You saved us." Emma buried her face in his chest. But she knew it wasn't over. Roy Gallows had crawled away alive. And somewhere out there, Conrad Higgs was waiting. Their fight was only beginning. Could two people outrun a past that refused to die? Jacob and Emma Rhodes were about to face the answer head-on. The night after the gunfight, the ranch stood scarred but still standing. Bullet holes marked the walls. Splintered wood littered the ground. The smell of gunpowder lingered in the cold night air. But inside the small cabin, warmth glowed from the fire Jacob tended. Emma sat at the table, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of coffee. She kept replaying the moment she shot Roy Gallows. The fear. The fire in her veins. The sickening thud of the bullet hitting him. She had survived. She had fought back, but she also knew men like Roy didn't stay down for long. Sheriff Donovan paced the room, worry etched into his features. "Roy will come again," he said, "and Conrad Higgs won't be far behind. This gang won't give up easy." Jacob placed a reassuring hand on Emma's shoulder. "We'll be ready." But Donovan shook his head. "Jacob, I think it's time you two leave Arizona. Lay low somewhere safer, maybe even go north. You can't protect this ranch and fight these men at the same time." Emma felt her breath catch. Leave the place that had started to feel like home? Jacob looked at her, studying her face. She didn't need to speak. He knew what she feared, running forever. But he also knew they had no choice. The next morning, they packed supplies into a small wagon. Food, blankets, tools, extra ammunition. Emma tucked the turquoise pendant safely into her pocket. The only reminder of her parents, and the thing Conrad Higgs would kill to have. Carl, Harold, and Millie came to see them off. "You come back someday," Millie said firmly, wiping her eyes with her apron. "This ranch will wait for you." Emma hugged her tightly. "Thank you for everything." Donovan rode alongside their wagon until they reached the outskirts of Dry Gulch. "You two head toward Dodge City," he said. "Wyatt Earp is there now. If anyone can help you stand against Higgs, it's him." Jacob nodded. "We'll find him." Donovan tipped his hat. "Stay alive." The journey was long and brutal. They traveled over rocky trails, through dry gulches and wide plains. Some nights they camped under the stars, keeping the fire small and their guns close. Other nights they stayed with travelers, listening to rumors of a dangerous gang sweeping across the territory, asking about a woman with brown eyes. Emma. 2 weeks into the journey, they reached a narrow canyon pass. As they moved through it, the air felt too still, too quiet. Jacob frowned. "Stay close to me." A gunshot cracked the silence. Emma screamed as bullets ricocheted off the canyon walls. Outlaws appeared on the ridges. Roy Gallows was alive. He stood with a bandaged arm and a hatred burning in his eyes. "You thought you could escape me?" Roy shouted. "Hand over the girl and the pendant, Jacob. This ends today." Jacob fired back. The canyon erupted in chaos. Bullets flew from every angle. The wagon shook under the impact. Emma prayed silently, her grip tight around her revolver. She fired when she could, each shot from her trembling hands screaming courage she never knew she had. But they were outnumbered. Then Emma saw a small keg of gunpowder in the wagon. Her heart stopped. "Jacob!" she yelled. "Cover me!" He fired at the men climbing down the ridge. Emma grabbed the keg, lit a rag from the lantern flame, and hurled it at the rocky slope. "Get down!" The explosion shook the ground. A cloud of dust swallowed the canyon. Outlaws screamed. Rocks tumbled. Jacob grabbed Emma's hand, and together they fled, spurring the horses into a furious gallop. They didn't stop until the canyon disappeared behind them, swallowed by distance and smoke. That night by the fire, Emma dressed Jacob's wounded arm carefully. Her hands trembled, but she didn't let go. "You saved us again," Jacob whispered. Emma swallowed hard. "I was so scared." Jacob cupped her cheek. "Fear doesn't make you weak, it means you're human." "And brave." Tears pricked her eyes. She leaned into his touch. For the first time, she felt not like a burden, but equal, a partner, a wife. Days later, Dodge City rose on the horizon. Dusty streets, saloons, wooden signs, and the unmistakable presence of lawmen who kept danger in check. They found Wyatt Earp in a small office near the Long Branch Saloon. Tall, calm, his gaze sharp. Jacob explained everything. Emma showed him the turquoise pendant. Wyatt studied it carefully. "This pendant is worth more than you realize," he said. "Conrad Higgs has been chasing family heirlooms like this for years. He uses them as leverage, trading, gambling, controlling people." Emma's heart sank. "What do we do?" Wyatt leaned back. "Stay in Dodge City until we handle Higgs. My deputies and I will take Roy Gallows into custody if he shows his face." Jacob nodded. Relief washed through him. 3 nights later, that relief shattered. Emma stepped out of the livery stable and froze. Roy Gallows leaned against a post, pistol aimed at her. "Evening, Mrs. Rhodes," he growled. "Give me the pendant." Emma's blood ran cold. Before she could scream, Jacob's voice thundered behind her. "Roy!" Jacob's rifle was raised. Roy spun and fired. Jacob dove aside. Gunshots exploded. Wyatt Earp and his deputy rushed in, guns drawn. Roy fired wildly as he ducked behind a water trough. Emma crawled toward the wagon, her hands scrambling until they grasped her revolver. Roy leapt out, aiming at Jacob. Emma didn't hesitate. She fired. Her bullet slammed into Roy's arm, sending him stumbling. Wyatt fired once more, hitting Roy's leg. Roy Gallows collapsed. His gun clattered to the ground. The fight was over. The nightmare was done. Roy was dragged away in irons, screaming and spitting curses. In custody, he finally confessed everything. How Higgs had ordered Emma kidnapped, how the pendant was the key to a fortune, how he'd hunted her across the territory. With Roy behind bars and Higgs on the run, Emma felt a heavy weight lift from her soul. Wyatt placed a hand on Jacob's shoulder. "You two should go home, start fresh." And so they did. The journey back to Dry Gulch was long, but peaceful. When the ranch finally came into view, Emma stopped and stared. Home. Together, they rebuilt the porch, patched the bullet holes, and painted the walls. Emma planted flowers. Jacob bought her a simple silver wedding ring. Every evening they sat on the porch, watching the sun sink behind the canyon. Jacob had lost Caroline, but he had found new hope. Emma had lost everything, but she had found a new life. A better life. A husband who protected her. A home where she was safe. And a love born from the unlikeliest place. A roadside rescue that became a lifelong bond. On the wild frontier, where danger walked the land and hearts were hardened by loss, Jacob and Emma Rhodes found something rare. Healing, family, and a love strong enough to survive the darkest storms. Their story proved that even the harshest winter can lead to a brighter spring.